Welcome to the show. I'm John.
I'm Jacob.
And this is the Heimer.
Yeah, so here we are. It's been great, John, to kind of be jumping back into it and, getting into some topics and everything.
Diving deep into topics. It's been great to kind of stretch the old mind again.
Yeah, we were having the one talk about 1,000 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And minimalism is another one we've done recently. And we have Clark here with us today. And Clark is basically... has no idea what we're talking about, basically, here. And in fact, really, I don't, or maybe John does either. But I do.
So it's going to be a great one.
But part of the idea, I think, of the show is to generate sort of questions and to be thinking about some of these things. So it's likely that nobody on Earth really knows the answers to all the questions that we're going to be talking about. But we thought we'd talk about Carl Jung a little bit today. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, not much. I know he's like early 20th century psychologist. I don't recall what field of psychology he's in. Behavioral, maybe. Other than that, you have the Jungian archetypes. I know that. I don't know all of them or most of them, but yeah, that's about the extent of my knowledge.
By the way, I don't think you would see this, but we have incense going, so if you see little puffs of smoke, don't worry, we're not on fire. Yeah. I mean, the show is on fire, but...
Everybody
understands that. Yeah, of course. And how about you, John? Do you know anything?
Nope.
Yeah.
Very little.
Same. So, why I wanted to talk about this a little bit, kind of bringing it up, is that I'm interested in the basic idea. Like I think I get the basic idea of what he was talking about. Very well respected, I think. And he talked about something that he just called the shadow. And he basically had two different realms in which he talked about that. The individual shadow and the collective shadow. Actually, the only reason I knew about him, this is maybe a little embarrassing, but is only because of a Tool song. It's called 46 and 2. And that whole song is about the personal shadow. And if I started researching Jung a little bit more, and if I understand right, basically he said that we have sort of a darker side to our psyche, and that most of the time we're sort of taught to resist that. Like our daily life is to resist that and push it away and don't go towards that darkness. But then Jung and some very few others said a little bit of the opposite. That not that you should, of course, become evil and a horrible person, but that you should allow your brain to go to sort of delve deeply into the dark parts of your mind, basically so you could understand yourself better, and once you did that, you could come back the other way a lot stronger. I don't know if I explained that right.
So overcoming some of the more evil things within you, like accepting that they're there and then being able to overcome. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. But like that you can't really be, I don't know, it's almost like bases and acids or something. It's like almost like you have to go one way before you can fully go the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So like you could be too good, and so you want to even out?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I would guess he would have said that like we all have basically a dark side. We all have this shadow, and I don't mean just like we speed a little bit. I mean that we have a truly dark side to our brain that we just we know how to actively suppress that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think, Clark? Is any of that making sense?
Yeah, although, I mean, I think what I would see as the biggest benefit to doing that, going down the dark road and seeing what's down there, is I think once you've identified it, you can, like, identified the bad parts of you or what you're willing to do or would do in certain circumstances, then maybe you're able to see that coming a little further off than you might otherwise. But if you're, living your perfect life, behaving the proper way, and then you suddenly get in the circumstance where you're made to make a choice, and then you pick the wrong one, perhaps if you would have done this introspection, then you could have seen that coming and gone the other way. But beyond maybe risk minimalization, that I don't know if understanding that part of you is going to go too far and like making you a more good person.
Right.
Or is this about making you more rounded as a person?
I don't totally know, but I guess it's a little closer to how you're describing it, Clark. It's maybe it's a little bit more of sort of how to protect yourself from going down that darker path.
Okay. Interesting.
Feels
okay.
like this is a Star Wars theme. Wasn't this in Star Wars? Like,
Well,
I'm not an expert on Star Wars.
It reminded me of the Amish when they have right. So they have a year or so where they just go out and they just do whatever they want, and a lot of them just get real crazy with it. I'm not sure why they do that.
You mean they come back then to the community?
Most do. I think most do, but some of them.
Yeah, you either leave pretty much permanently, or you're saying, okay, I'm in.
I kind of get that. It sort of sorts out your community then. You're either committed or you're not committed. Like,
and you know what you're losing if you're committed.
Right.
And you already understand the lifestyle.
That's
you
right.
To jump ship, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't think going down the dark path is like, this is pretty nice. I don't know. You're looking at genocide on your left and other things on your right, and so I don't think there's I guess the intention would always be to come back, but I don't know if if you're walking down the dark path and then you come back down the good path, are you able to then go further down the good path, or are you kind of just at where you would be otherwise, but in a little bit more secure of a position?
Yeah, have a little more armor on from slipping.
I think it would help us maybe understand each other better. Why some people are doing certain things. Maybe helping others that are down this dark path. Like, hey, I see where you are. I see how you could get there. This is maybe how I would try to get out of that.
Oh yeah, a lot more empathy, knowing that
Having
you're
empathy,
capable of doing crazy things and seeing people who might have done so.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Well, I don't know, like, it'd be interesting to learn more and know, like, how it's suggested that people learn about this. Like,
learn about what?
About their shadow.
Their shadow.
Like, is a suggestion that you're doing sort of I don't know if this is the right term, but like psychotherapy kind of things to access that, or could this be the sort of thing that people might use some of the mushroom sort of use dosages to try to access different parts of their brains, or I don't know.
Yeah, I could see journaling maybe, just writing down all the dark thoughts and such.
Like, I want to strangle my wife today.
Yep. Write that stuff.
No, not me.
Make sure it's locked in a place that nobody can see it.
Yeah. Here's my journal.
There you go. That's not locked. So let's go through it. Journaling, art, maybe paintings, poetry, something expressive.
Feels hard to access though. Like, I don't know if, like, maybe journaling or some sort of creative expression would allow you to get in there a little bit, but it would be really hard to mimic or to, like, properly evaluate what you would do in certain situations if it was like, the train track scenario, for example.
Yeah.
The train's gonna nail more people than it would if you switch the track, but you're then going to kill people. Like, what would you do in that situation? You don't know until you're there. You think you know prior, or maybe your poetry or your journal, entries indicate a certain thing.
Right, it's not the real life.
Yeah, so I don't know how deep you can really go and how much armor you're really putting on, or if it's like a false sense of security, like, I understand myself now. I've got this. Like,
that's a great point. Like, we're never really going to understand ourselves
until we actually go hang out with people that are dark.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do we know any of those people, John? We gotta.
Then we can find some.
Okay, great. Well, I was thinking about how, like, if I was ever gonna kind of get into that or try it for my own brain, for me, I would want a strong community around me. I would want to communicate that to friends and family, and basically have a safe way out.
Right.
If there's some truth to all this, and you could go down this negative slippery path, you want some protection from that too, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, at least as far as I understand it, that seems really true, because if it's your shadow, it's as much you as the good part is. And so if you find yourself down that path, maybe you understand it differently because you're coming from the good side, or at least the socially accepted side. But I don't know why you wouldn't get drawn into that just as much as you would the good side. So.
Well, this is a completely unfair question. Maybe I'll just pose it to you, Clark. But do you spare John this? Well, it's just fun to see you react. Do you ever feel like there's parts of that in your mind that you sense, or I don't mean that you have this evil dark side necessarily, but you can see glimpses of your brain or your thinking that is dark, and that you actively kind of stay away from?
I think there's instances where I like see things or think about things where it's just like, this could happen, and like in our society it makes total sense why people don't want it to happen or why it doesn't happen. But and like break it down a few levels, and suddenly killing someone just doesn't sound nearly so crazy, and there's no accountability, there's no like social structure that says, wags their finger at you and says, no, well, you could justify that in any way, basically. And suddenly, killing someone is then a part of whatever social structure and accountability system that you live in that
right.
in that scenario. And so I feel like there's sometimes where I can imagine things being a little bit differently, and how behaviors that are very counter to what we find appropriate would be just commonplace and acceptable. And of course, murdering someone's probably a bit extreme, but I'm sure there are social structures that were set up in a way that that's pretty standard. So I don't know if I have like desires to just do things like that, but there's I think it's a kind of well-known phrase, like the call of the void, of like, you could just do this, and then that would be crazy. And sometimes I think people experience it like driving down the interstate. You think about it a little too much, and you're like, I'm hurtling down in like a tin can going 80 miles an hour, and like all I could do is take my hand and go like that, and then suddenly everything's changed, and it's just like, I could do that, like that's how much power I have right now,
right?
Which is absurd. And then scale that up to buttons for nuclear blasts and stuff like that. And so I feel like there's some of that where people can recognize the capability that they have or that other people have, and that sometimes there's that would be interesting kind of thought. But I'm not sure that necessarily translates to like, oh yeah, like maybe tomorrow. I'm not so sure about that.
Right.
I feel like this is kind of tiptoeing around something that's been going around the internet called intrusive thoughts, or letting your intrusive thoughts win.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's more of a playful thing. Doing that. It's more like tripping somebody, pushing somebody into the bush.
I see.
Stuff like that. Undoing the thing on the salt shaker.
Just messing around with people and stuff. I mean, people are actually doing that, or they're thinking those things?
No, it's they are letting their intrusive thoughts win.
Yeah, that's the battle.
Okay.
That's the battle they're having.
And they're losing. You got it. That's fun. Yeah, that's good. Huh. Well, here's an idea. What if, and again, I could be misunderstanding all of it, but like maybe the shadow is not really. I think Jung said it was a bad, dark place. That's why it's the shadow. But what if it's actually just the anti-place? In other words, if Clark, you, a young man who's getting ready to go into the world of working and adulting all the time about everything. Most of your brain tells you to do those things in a certain way, like whatever, to just follow a certain path and stuff. Perhaps your shadow is just sort of like I don't want to say devil's advocate because that's got a negative, but it's got like the flip side. It's the other part of your little part of your brain that says like, well, actually, maybe consumerism isn't the path I want to do, or that sort of thing. Again, I don't think you meant it like that, but maybe that's one way to think about it.
Yeah. So a part of you that's always just throwing up alternatives,
right,
but has to tag along nonetheless.
Right.
Like the devil on your shoulder.
Yeah, like the old cartoons and stuff. They'd always pop up.
Yeah.
And yeah. That would be so more visual, like clear.
You're right.
You see somebody talking to their shoulder.
Probably got to steer clear of that person.
Yeah. So what's this? You said, okay, so you have your own personal dark shadow, but did you say something about a community dark shadow as well?
Collective, I think,
collective,
is what he called it. Yeah, like
dark
somehow
shadow.
society has a shadow too, that I assume is the same
And maybe
sort
that's
of idea.
okay. And maybe that's what, I mean, you were kind of hinting on this of what society's norms are.
Mm-hmm.
And so would you consider this to be the opposite of society's norms? Or does society also have a dark place where they, let's say, gosh, bad example, but I'm going to say it anyway. Somebody rapes somebody's daughter, right? And then now society hates that person for doing that, and they are totally for the dad of that daughter killing that guy, right? They'll all look the other way. Like, would you consider that to be the dark shadow?
I guess that's one take on it, but I think that's super circumstantial.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends where you draw the line on the isolation of the event, right? How many circles do you go out in order to say, oh, well, is killing that guy okay? No. What if he did this? That changes things.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the circumstances on that event. Okay, well, that's a little, blurry.
Mm-hmm.
How far do you have to zoom out
Right.
to? I
Sure,
don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is getting into the, a little bit of the psychology behind modern warfare. A little bit, like, I mean, like this, if we really could dive a lot deeper into this and get to the, like, why would a society be okay with killing a whole bunch of people?
Right.
At what point are they justifying that as okay? Because we sort of get the political answer to everything, right? And it's that all that's convoluted. Who knows what we're even hearing, whether it's true, all this sort of stuff. But what about the psychological side? Like, suppose society could deal with their collective shadow, fully deal with it, understand it, learn about it. Could it be possibly a way to start abolishing war?
So how do we as a society then face this, or whatever Carl wants us to do?
Just ask ourselves, what would Carl do?
Right. Oh, okay.
We can make bumper stickers for the Heimer show. Yes. Let's get the team on bumper stickers.
Okay.
Click the link below.
Yeah.
Lots of therapy, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a society.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's so many, like, studying societies and what their underlying motivations are and what their values are and how those were developed and why and what that leads to as far as behaviors go. Like, that's ridiculously complicated and not something the average person is going to do. So I don't know, you know, where they can go with that, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you have specialists in that field, or, you know, politicians who are supposed to be, you know, educated at least to some degree on those things. And
Yeah, maybe the politicians who decide these things have to go through some sort of rigorous testing, psychological testing. I don't know who determines what kind of testing.
Yeah.
You know, I know that gets sticky, but gosh, some sort of screening would be great. Have you seen any people? Yeah, anything. Yeah, just 5-minute internet test, whatever.
Do we know if they can even read?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. Well, I think Jefferson wanted sort of an inept Congress. He wrote about the idea, like, basically, it's okay if these people are not very good at what they do. We want them out of our business.
They just constantly bicker with each other.
Yeah, just let them fight and just play around in D.C. or whatever. Yeah.
Everybody thinks something's happening.
Yeah. There's reality TV.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting to do a deep dive onto this guy and see, you know, if we're talking about the right kinds of things, or, you know, I mean,
If our thoughts have aligned with what he was
yeah. Right. I mean, who knows? And maybe there's probably been plenty of people that have sort of discredited his thinking since.
Sure. Yeah.
I was looking at interviews of his from, I want to say like 1950, 51, 52, somewhere in there. Sort of black and white interviews are online quite a bit. And found it very interesting. Because I think he was one of the top sort of thinkers in the world at the time, but now maybe there's a whole pushback and, you know, different ways of thinking about it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard him referenced a lot in modern philosophy, and I probably have a bit of a niche look at that, but at least some of the folks that I've looked at have mentioned him. So I think he's still prevalent thought, or relevant thought, prevalent and relevant, I guess. But
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe it begs of here's kind of my final thought, but I was thinking about, like, what do we do as individuals if we start seeing our shadow? Like, what are we saying? We do a little bit of what he was saying, and we analyze it, we look deeply into the eyes of our shadow, or are we turning away and because that's a slippery slope?
Right. Are we ignoring it, or are we
I think
journaling about it?
Yeah, I think the risk of ignoring it is you don't, like, what's on the edge. What do you think's on the good side that's really your shadow, like pulling the strings. So I think that's where maybe his, you know, suggestion might be to evaluate it and make sure you can at least identify the different parts of that, and so that when you are behaving a certain way, you can say, okay, am I within the bounds of what I'm supposed to be doing, or is this...
But you're supposed to be doing what society wants you to do?
Well... Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
We've figured out another thing.
We did it.
We did
it all.
Did it again.
Now leave a comment down below if we're maybe slightly off on any of this, or maybe perhaps we don't have it all figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah, let us know, what would Carl do?
Yeah, if you've got to figure it out, tell us.
Hashtag what would Carl do?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's yeah. We were a little wondering how much we could talk about something we're not super educated about, but it's kind of an interesting topic, nonetheless.
And we did it.
Yep. Yeah. We did it.
Well, thanks as always to our producer Schmidt.
Yes.
For all he does.
And we've got a whole team inside the house making up food and
Mm-hmm.
you know, kind of supporting us at a distance. So we're very thankful for that whole team too.
And thanks, Clark, for being on again.
Heck
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. Maybe some viewers would like to go back and find you on your previous one.
Yeah.
You know,
Ooh.
see how much you're grown up or whatever since
Mhm.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can have like regular Clark updates. So like,
every
if this
2 years.
gets a lot of likes, we'll introduce Clark updates into our mix.
How many likes, John?
At least 3.
So it'll be close. Okay.
If that's what the people want.
We're gonna get it.
Well, 1, 2, 3. I think we can do 3.
Okay.
I mean, not we. Yeah.
We can get 3 likes.
Yeah, we can get 3 likes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Clark.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks.